All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're continuing in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, and I think it's verse, 12? Yeah. Yes, okay. Canto 3, Chapter 16, verse 12, which says, "These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. This incident therefore proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jaya and Vijaya is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again to Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Hare Krishna. So the translation again is, "These servants of mine have transgressed against you." You meaning the four Kumaras, right? No, okay. These servants of mine, those are the four Kumaras, have transgressed against you. Jai Vijay. Jai and Vijay, yeah. Not knowing the mind of their master, I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. Okay. So again, I'm going to read the purport. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. The incident therefore proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jaya and Vijaya is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again to the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruption between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So there's some very nice points in this verse, Canto 3, Chapter 16, verse number 12. Canto 3, Chapter 16, verse number 12. So the what's happening here is we see that when there's a leader, a real leader, if his servants or people that are, you know, working for him make a mistake, uh, he accepts the responsibility. Uh, now, there's different ways of looking at this. If a servant or let's say an employee of a CEO makes a mistake, is it the CEO's fault or the employee's fault? Well, it's clear that the employee made a mistake, but was he so instructed to make the mistake, or was it his own mistake and not because the boss told him to do something wrong? So sometimes bosses tell their employees to do something wrong. And if they do it, they get punished. And the employee will say, well, look, why are you punishing me? I was told to do this. So the police may look into the responsibility of the CEO also, but that doesn't take the perpetrator, the direct perpetrator, off responsibility. If a boss tells their employee to do something illegal, and they do it, well, both the person that performs the illegal act and the boss can be prosecuted if there's evidence that the boss was the person who told the employee to do something illegal. On the opposite side, when we're talking about Krishna and the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, the Lord is always protecting his devotees. Even if they make a mistake, the Lord will do everything to uh, not make that mistake subject to a very severe punishment. So here he's saying, these servants of mine have transgressed against you, the four Kumaras, not knowing the mind of their master. Well, the mind of the master, Krishna never wants anyone to be mistreated. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. In other words, basically, he's asking the four Kumaras not to be so, let's say, mean to Jai and Vijay. And he asks in a very nice way that, although they should receive some punishment for what they've done wrong, but Krishna is saying basically, look, okay, they made a mistake. I accept it. I recognize it, but please don't be too harsh with my servants or devotees. And if you can, please make sure that they can come back to me quickly after having some kind of punishment from you. Now, Prabhupada says, from this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. Well, the servitors were being cursed to fall down in the material world again. So once you've been in Vaikuntha, if you're cursed to fall down in this material world again, that's like the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And then Prabhupada says, this incident therefore proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. Interesting point. The case of Jaya and Vijaya is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back again to the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequence, although the suffering is temporary. So it's what you would call a modicum, uh, a small, let's say, punishment for the mistake. It's not severe punishment because we're dealing with devotees and we're dealing with devotees that made a mistake out of, let's say, ignorance or being not attentive. They didn't mean something to hurt anyone. Okay. Uh, it is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees, but when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. So in other words, when a devotee makes a mistake, although it might not have been premeditated mistake, it might be an accident, which is the case here, then the punishment should not be severe because this Jaya and Vijaya, they were doing service, and this, they're doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, and they make a mistake by stopping the Kumaras from entering. But basically, it says, the Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Well, that's a real leader. He accepts the responsibility of mistakes made by his servants and tries to alleviate the servants from harsh punishment. But that's in the case of an accident. If the servants premeditated to do something mean to someone, that's different. But in this case, it's an accident. So there are accidents in life all the time. So therefore, even though there have to be some consequences for the accident, the suffering should only be temporary. It shouldn't be some really severe, uh, uh, let's say, over the severe type of punishment. So the Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Okay, good. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say about this. Well, it says, these servants of mine have transgressed against you. Okay, so these servants of mine, Jaya and Vijay, have transgressed against the four Kumaras, not knowing the mind of their master. Well, the mind of their master, Krishna, he never would want to harm or transgress his devotees. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. So in other words, Krishna wants Jaya and Vijay to come back to him as soon as possible. They have to have some suffering for the mistake they made, but it wasn't done intentionally, and therefore the punishment should not be too severe. And this is normal. And even in the material world, these type of considerations are taken into account. Like, for example, let's say uh, a mother accidentally forgets to, let's say she goes into a supermarket to buy something and she locks her kid in the car, and uh, that's a very dangerous thing to do, especially when there's hot weather, because many times little children can suffocate being locked in a car in the summertime when it's very hot. So if that happens, if the child dies because the child was locked in the car when the mother was shopping, uh, that is the mother is going to be severely punished for that, and she can go to jail. So in every situation in life, we have to be very, very careful not to do things that will make us a criminal. So a mother who locks her child in a car and goes in the supermarket to shop and comes back and the child is dead because it's a hot day and they die of suffocation or whatever, she's subjected to be prosecuted for murder, very serious. So you have to be very, very careful, uh, you know, of decisions that we make in life. So in the same way, uh, when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequence, although that suffering is temporary. In other words, the Lord is always protecting his devotees. When they do make a mistake, uh, and in this case, it's a mistake uh, not done purposely, it's made out of, let's say, ignorance, the punishment should not be too severe. Now, what the poor Kumaras wanted to do was, uh, curse Jaya and Vijaya to go back into the material world, which after being in Vaikuntha, being cursed to go back to the material world is like the worst thing you could ever do, the worst way to punish someone. So, uh, so therefore, Prabhupada says here, when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doorman's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. So this is Krishna himself telling the four Kumaras, look, please be don't be too harsh, Vijaya and Vijay. They're my servants. If they made a mistake, I feel that I am responsible. So please don't be so harsh with them. Yeah. And see, that's important. Like let's say there's a new mother, and after a couple of years, the child is maybe 3 years old or 4 years old, and the child makes a mistake. And the mother and father, if they become severely angry and punish the child, that is wrong because it's just a child, right? Children make mistakes. And even if it's a severe mistake, right? You have to be very, very careful how you punish someone. So here, Krishna is asking the four Kumaras not to be too harsh in their punishment of Jaya and Vijaya, who are only his servants. So he's responsible, or they are responsible for their servants. and the servants made a mistake. It was not something, let's say, premeditated and nasty. They just made a bad decision, and by stopping the four Kumaras to enter Vaikuntha. Okay, but they still have to suffer the consequences. But the consequence should not be severe because they're servants of the Lord, and they're not, you know, prejudicial. They made a mistake. That's it. And everybody makes mistakes. Even if you're the doorkeeper of Vaikuntha, you can make a mistake. Okay. All right, let's go on text 13.
Be careful on how you punish. Is that only for the devotees or even for normal?
Yeah, it's for normal people also.
So, but there are some crimes where the people have to be uh, hung or hung for death.
Yes.
In those cases, they have to be right, Maharaj, because they probably defiled a woman or they have raped a child. So those people have to be killed, right?
Yeah. But the what happens nowadays, it could take, 20 years before they're hung. All right. Because there's a lot of, appeals and, you know, the the uh, the whole process of uh, capital punishment. They're very careful, right? They don't just next day, you know, hang the person. There can be a lot of, it could take maybe 20 years or 25 years before the person is hanged. They don't want to make a mistake. That's the worst thing. You hang a person who's actually innocent, right? So, and that's happened many times. So they don't want to make that mistake. So they go real slow and they allow to have, several different, appeals, you know. But finally, when all the appeals are finished and there's, you know, unequivocal, uh, you know, um, evidence that the person definitely did the crime, then there's no more, appeals, and the person has to be uh, punished. But when it's capital punishment, they go real slow. I don't want to make a mistake. You know, and many times, innocent people were executed. It happens sometimes because of really mean, nasty uh, policemen and judges. But normally, when it's capital punishment, they're very careful not to unnecessarily, let's say, kill a innocent person. But it does happen. It does happen. Or they put someone in jail for 50 years, and they do like 35 years, and then it's found out that the person was not really guilty. They made a mistake, that's happened a lot. And then, they have to pay reparations for the unnecessary suffering that person had to go through. And you see in life, there's so many different situations. That's why it's better is to follow Krishna consciousness and associate with the only devotees, because you could be in the wrong place at the wrong time and be accused of something that you didn't do, and it could take years to get out of jail, right? Uh, and, and it happens a lot where people who don't commit a crime, but they were in a place where a crime was committed, and they're arrested, and then there's a quick court case, and they end up in jail, right? And then it could take 20 years to get out of jail to prove, after it's proved that this person didn't do anything wrong. So it's better not to go to bars and go to prostitutes and things like that, because you're leaving yourself open to be accused of something that you didn't do, but you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So therefore, devotees, they should go to bed early and wake up early and chant their rounds. But there are people that are out, till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, drinking and doing all kinds of nonsense things, and those are the people that get into trouble, you know, and going into bars and things like that. That's like walking into hell. And asking, it's like you're asking for trouble. You go in a place where people are drinking liquor. So that's why no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. If you follow those four rules, then 96 to 98% of problems in life go away. Right? The other 2%, well, it's not going to be so severe, you know. But if you're doing, you're going to nightclubs and you're going to bars and associating with people that are drinking liquor, and there's so many things, horrible things happening in these bars, you should expect that there's going to be trouble. Because there are a lot of other people that are taking intoxicants, and people can get angry really quick. It's like a unexpected hurricane. Okay, so text 13. Brahma continued, even though the sages had been bitten by the serpent of anger, their souls were not satiated with hearing the Lord's lovely and illuminating speech, which was like a series of Vedic hymns. It's a very nice verse, and there's no purport to it. So Brahma continued, even though the sages had been bitten by the serpent of anger. See, now that is a metaphor, but it's a very nice metaphor. The serpent of anger. Well, what's a serpent? Like, serpent has a poisonous tongue, and it's fire, and so that's why he's saying, bitten by the serpent of anger. The anger is like that, when people get angry. Sometimes, people get way too angry at their kids, and it scares the heck out of the kids, and they can have they can be marked psychologically for the rest of their life because of the over punishment, because of the severe punishment of the parents. So Prabhupada said, show the rod, but don't use it. In other words, yeah, you can say, okay, you're going to be punished now. I'm going to give you, smack you 10 times with this stick, but you don't do it. Right? You just it's to scare the kid not to do those bad things anymore or mistakes.
Well, the kids are here at learning.
I would too if I was a kid. I heard that, Yeah. So, but on the other hand, bear the rod and spoil the child. That's bad also, because the child will never learn to do the right thing. They'll keep doing the wrong thing. But the punishment, you have to be careful not to over punish or overly scare the child. Right? So, and Prabhupada said, show the rod, but don't use it. So eventually, children get the message and they behave nicely. Now, if you don't do anything, the bad behavior of the child is going to get worse. But if you at least give them a warning, and the warning can get severe, and the worst thing you can do is take away the cell phone. from the kid. That's like, that's worse than murder. Cell phones become so, integral to their psyche that you take it away, it's like murder. And sometimes they commit suicide, or sometimes they kill the parents. Yeah, it's happened. Why don't you look that up? Yeah. Son kills his mother because she took his phone away from her. That's why it's good. Don't give your kids cell phones. Not good. You see something? What's it say?
13-year-old girl accused of killing mom after phone was taken away.
Whoa, dangerous. Shouldn't take phones away from little kids. No, actually, we shouldn't give phones to little kids. That's, oh my God. Yeah. Huh?
March 2024.
What, this year?
Yes.
What happened?
I think this is the same movie. 13-year-old girl accused of killing mom.
Oh my
This
God.
year.
It's October 29.
Yeah, maybe this page is saying March 2024.
Okay, so we got to be really careful. Parents have to be really careful. Not over, or not giving exaggerated and, let's say, mean punishment to the children. So, yeah, but and Prabhupada said, show the rod, but don't use it. Okay. But on the other hand, today there's worse punishment than being beaten with a stick. Taking away the cell phones, like, like worse than murder. That's why kids should not have cell phones. That's my opinion. It's because a cell phone is it's very powerful instrument. You can uh, speak to people anywhere in the world with the cell phone. Yes.
Sometimes like grown-ups looking thing, but like when you recommend getting a cell phone, like so that the kids are in control when they get the cell phone, so they don't like mess with it.
Well, there's such a thing as limited cell phones where you can't, you know, go everywhere you want on the internet. You can only go to get, your homework from the teacher, but the cell phone doesn't do anything else. If you give, an unlimited cell phone, then, after they find out what their homework is, then they spend, 10 hours on the cell phone talking to people and playing video games and all kinds of things, just wasting time, basically.
Yeah, recently there was an article in the news about some of the Asian kids.
Yeah.
They're even 6 months to a year. They're not even coming out of their bed. It's
Just playing games.
just playing games, internet, social media. So their life is just in.
Sometimes they don't eat.
Yeah.
For 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an addiction, like a lot of people.
Yeah. And who gave them the cell phone? Parents. The cell phone is a very powerful instrument. It's like a gun. Let's say you give your kid a gun, an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old a gun, they can kill themselves or kill somebody else accidentally, right? Or maybe they mean to do it. So they shouldn't have the ability to, have such a powerful instrument as a gun, right? But the same thing is a cell phone. A cell phone is a very, very powerful instrument. And it can put you, you can go all over the place and speak to people all over the world. And oftentimes you can come into contact with the worst people in the world, So it's very dangerous.
And they also, I attended one conference where they shared about the dopamine level.
Dopamine, yeah.
So if you send a child to a casino, the amount of dopamine that they get during that experience is the same that they get while playing with like a social media. So the analogy they gave is like, imagine you're sending your child every day to casino.
A bad association.
It's the same as like using the phone.
Wow. They compare that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. Don't give your kids cell phones. Of course, kids will get angry. Say, well, everybody else has a cell phone. Why can't I have? But a cell phone is, I mean, it's a very powerful instrument. You know, you can go all over the world with the cell phone. You know, and you can waste hours and hours with the cell phone also. You know. So it should only be used, you know, very sparingly if it's necessary. If it's not necessary, it's better not to have it. Even for adults, you know, it's better not to have it. Okie dokie. So yes, any questions?
Maharaj, a big addiction for adults as well. As soon as message comes, quickly they check like
Yeah,
in a
as
day.
soon as there's a ping, you know, doesn't matter what they're doing.
Everything will stop.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's the worst is when you're driving, there's a ping, you know, you look at it and you have an accident. Yes.
Some uh, some people might like some Teslas these days. They have something called auto steer, so it's just gonna go for them, and then probably they'll just use their phone in the meantime.
Yeah,
Right.
there were accidents with that too.
There have been accidents already
Yeah, there's
with the self-driving car. You don't have to drive, you know, the car drives by itself. That's like the dumbest thing you could do is to buy a self-driving car. It's extremely dangerous. Yeah.
it's, even if it's possible to like control yourself from even using it in a bad way, is it still bad to use a cell phone like that? Like unlimited apps and stuff like that.
Well,
If you can control it, like, is it a bad thing still?
that's a good question. Um, you know, one time I was talking to this very famous Indian man. Jeez, I don't know if I can remember his name. And somehow I was able to talk to him for a short, you know, like a minute or two, you know, and he gave a lecture and I heard it. And then I was able to, you know, talk to him for a minute or two. And he was saying that it was very important that every child has a cell phone
Really?
and a computer, not a cell phone, a computer, right? Every child has a computer. And when I talked to him, I said, "Well, I said when you grew up, you didn't have a computer, but look, you're a big success, right? So why are you saying that every child should have a computer? Because a computer is a very powerful instrument and can be misused very easily." And he didn't like that question. What was his name? He's a very famous man. He died now, but very, very famous. He's an Indian, South Indian.
Hmm.
Huh?
Abdul Kalam
Yeah, Abdul Kalam.
came.
Uh, where did I meet him? Yeah,
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I remember you had specified there was some conference somewhere in Seattle or somewhere where you also had attended, and when he said that every village should have access to internet and computer, and that's when you had posed this question to him.
yeah, it might have been,
That is
yeah,
Abdul Kalam.
yeah. I'm not sure whether it was France or it was the United States. It's Probably the United States where that happened. Anyway,
Seattle only. Yeah, here Seattle only. You had addressed this
yeah,
question.
yeah. I mean, the point was, I told him you grew up without a cell phone and a computer, and look what happened to you. You're a great success. So why do you want to put it? Why do you want every child to have a computer? He didn't like the question. He wasn't very interested in the question. He sort of ignored what I said. Yeah, he was saying that every child should have a computer. And he wanted to put a computer to every child in India. Right.
Looks like he came 2009.
Okay. Yeah. And I tried to challenge him on that, and I said, look, you grew up just fine without a computer, and you're great, success. Why do you want to give a computer to every child? The computers, it can, corrupt the child's mind. It's a very powerful instrument. He just ignored me. He wasn't interested in talking about it. Okay. Yeah, one time I met another very, very famous person. This was in France. I was driving down the street and I saw a man that had some kind of a beard, and there were a few people talking to him. And I had a hunch that he was a very first famous person. So I parked my car and I walked over and I was listening, and there was a group of people around him. And my hunch was right. He was a very, very famous person. And I ran back to my car and I got some Prabhupada's books, and I came back and I offered the books to this person who was very famous, and he refused to take them. He said, "What is it about?" I said it's about how you can have a successful life and go back to Godhead. I said, "I'm not interested. Go away." Yeah. And okay, who was it? He was an Armenian guy, but he was very, very famous. What was his name? Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. So 2 or 3 years later, he gave a message to it went all over the world. He said, "Now I'm on my basically," he said, I'm on my deathbed. I'm going to die, and what now?" Basically, he was saying, in other words, I don't know what's going to happen. Uh, and you see, when I gave him the opportunity to have Srimad Bhagavatam free, right? He refused it. And now a little bit later, a couple years later, he's on his deathbed and he's sending a message all over the world. He was very famous, saying, "Well, now I'm approaching death, and what now? I don't know what's going to happen to me." And that's his fault, because he had a chance to have a free Bhagavatam. I was offering it to him. He refused it, and then at the moment of death, he's confused. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So this is the problem when people are very famous. They get puffed up. They think they don't need any spiritual instruction, and then they're facing death and they don't know what's going to happen, and they're freaked. So yes, we should always take advice from genuine devotees. Right, so it's what, 7? Okay. Text 14. The Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered it as well. But although hearing, they could not understand what he, meaning Krishna, intended to do. me read. The Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import, because of its tremendous meaning, very important meaning, and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered it. Pondered means they thought about it seriously and pondered it as well. But although hearing, they could not understand what he, Krishna, intended to do. Okay, so, the servants of the Lord, Jai and Vijay, they make a mistake. And they now are going to be cursed to go back to the material world, fall down from Vaikuntha. They were not like in Vaikuntha, but they were the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha. So it's like being in Vaikuntha, but not exactly. So it's possible to fall down from a position like that because you're right on the edge of. That proves that it is possible to fall down from Vaikuntha. It is possible, but if you're on the edge like that, and so therefore, in the purport it says, it should be understood that no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead in speaking. There is no difference between the Supreme Person and his speeches, for he stands on the absolute platform. The sages tried with wide open ears to understand the words from the lips of the Supreme Lord, but although his speech was very concise and meaningful, the sages could not completely comprehend what he was saying. They could not even comprehend the purport of the speech or what the Supreme Lord wanted to do, nor could they understand whether the Lord was angry or pleased with them. So I remember Prabhupada, when he first met his Guru Dev, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he enjoyed very much hearing him speak. But he said, he frankly admitted, I couldn't understand what he was saying, but I was very happy hearing it. Yeah. And then, sometimes, someone would come into the room where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a speech. They'd say, oh, we're going to have a special parikram, and starting in a few minutes, you're all invited to come, so everyone would leave, but Prabhupada would stay, And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur noticed this, and he said, well, he's very interested in hearing, therefore I will give him special attention, right? Because he likes to hear. And yeah, so, but Prabhupada admitted that in the beginning when he, was hearing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's lectures, he didn't really understand much because he was using such high, King's English, as they say, King's English. Yeah. But obviously, by hearing and hearing, Prabhupada began to understand, and not only understand, but to profoundly understand. And he completely surrendered to his guru. Okay. The Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import. That means that the meaning of the words that he was saying had such importance, and it was difficult for the Kumaras to understand what he was saying. And sometimes it's like that, you might meet someone that's very highly educated, not in mundane education, but in spiritual education. And when they're speaking on such a high level that it's hard to understand what they're saying. Right? Now, in the case of Srila Prabhupada, like Prabhupada's Gurudev Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was like that. He was always using the King's English, and he was always speaking on the highest level of Krishna consciousness. However, Prabhupada's speech was very, let's say, direct and simple, right? Now, that's not to belittle the speech of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because look what happened. By Prabhupada hearing him, he became a pure devotee, right? But Prabhupada's speech was much more, let's say, simple. That you can understand it easier. Let's put it like that. Like if I didn't know about Prabhupada, but I stumbled on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, I would have heard him speak, but I probably would have had a lot of difficulty understanding what he's saying, because he was speaking on such a high level. If I continue to hear and hear and hear, eventually I would understand. But sometimes people say, well, I heard your guru's lecture. I couldn't understand half the words because we have our own, let's say, we have our own words. Like you say, all of a sudden, the preacher is preaching, and then he says, Harilam Sankirtan Ki Jai, in the middle of the speech, right? And people don't understand what does that mean, It's not something that's part of the English language, Yeah, the words are, but there's a meaning to it, and it's too hard for them to understand, So you have to be careful when you're speaking in an audience to say things. There is what you call the ISKCON jargon, There are words that we use that are not used normally by not by the people. But devotees understand what it is, but the outside people don't really understand. They say, "Well, I couldn't understand what he was saying." Well, there was one English man. He was associating with devotees, and he's having a hard time understanding what Krishna consciousness was. So one day he had his earphones on. He was hearing a lecture by Prabhupada, and then all of a sudden he took the earphones off and he said out loud, really loudly, he said, "Your guru just insulted me." Sometimes Prabhupada says he's a rascal, and he describes who the rascal is. So, the rascals are people engaged in illicit sex and all that stuff, So he took off the earphones and said, "Your guru just insulted me." So it's hard for people to understand a spiritual, let's say, speech by a person like Prabhupada, because Prabhupada, goes right to the core of what is right and what is wrong. And sometimes it's too much of a shock by karmis, materialists, And then sometimes words are used that they're not used to hearing. Like Prabhupada coined words that they're not part of that you won't find in the English dictionary. Like, for example, fruitive activities. Look that up. See if you see it in the English dictionary. I think it eventually became a word in the English dictionary, but it wasn't before. It's because of Prabhupada. He put a new word in the English dictionary. Fruitive.
Enjoying the process.
Yeah. If you look into an older dictionary, you won't find that word. And that was coined by Prabhupada. Fruitive. Right? You're looking at fruitive, right?
Yes. Fruitive. And Merriam-Webster's dictionary.
Uh-huh.
Enjoying, possessing.
Yeah, they add new words as they become used frequently in the English language. So they add them to the dictionary. Whereas in older dictionaries, you won't see that word.
Yes. There's not a lot of examples also.
Okay.
Just
In somewhere Oxford Dictionary, they say the earliest use of the adjective fruitive is in the mid 1600s.
When?
The earliest known use of adjective fruitive is in the mid
Adjective, the adjective fruitive. Yes.
is in the mid 1600s.
1600s?
Yeah,
400 years ago?
the,
Really?
yeah, Oxford Dictionary. That's just that.
Huh? No, what date do they give again?
1600.
Huh?
Mid
Oh,
1600.
1600.
Yeah, that's 400 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, that's strange. I thought it was coined by Prabhupada.
History for fruitive adjective was first published in 1898.
Uh-huh.
Not yet revised. Fruitive adjective was last modified in July 2020.
2022. 2023. That's just like a few years ago.
Yeah, it was modified,
Has to.
but was first published in 1898.
1898. Okay. So Prabhupada did not coin that word, but he knew it. Interesting.
Maybe it was not frequently used
Yeah.
by anyone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So are there any questions?
Maharaj, are Jaya and Vijaya positions in Vaikuntha or are they actually individuals?
I'll say that again.
Jaya and Vijaya,
Yes.
are they positions in Vaikuntha like Brahma and other gods where different souls can take those positions, or are these actual specific individuals?
Yeah, actual specific individuals like us. Yeah. But they're advanced spiritually, but they learned a lesson. Let's put it like that. And we learn by their experience when they were stopped by the Kumaras to go into Vaikuntha, right? So their first thought was, well, the Kumaras made a mistake, that's for sure. So then right away they cursed them to go back to this material world, which is like the worst thing you can do. If someone is in Vaikuntha and you curse them to go back to the material world, that's the worst thing that can happen to them. So right away Krishna comes and he begins to speak to the four Kumaras, and the four Kumaras, by the way Krishna is speaking to them, they realize, oh my God, we made a big mistake. And then Krishna asks them to, don't curse them, severely. And that's basically what's being said here. So it says, the Lord's excellent speech was difficult to comprehend because of its momentous import and its most profound significance. The sages heard it with wide open ears and pondered it, thought about it, in other words, as well. But although hearing, they could not understand what he intended to do. So basically, in the previous verse before that one, it says, Brahma continues. So Brahma is explaining the history of Jaya and Vijay, right? So even though the sages, Jaya and Vijay, had been bitten by the serpent of anger, their souls were not satiated with hearing the Lord's lovely and illuminating speech, which was like a series of Vedic hymns. So what's happening here is Krishna is going to protect his devotees. And he comes and starts speaking to the four Kumaras, because the four Kumaras necessarily got angry and cursed Jai and Vijay, who are servants of the Lord, right? And but when Krishna is trying to convince them not to, be so severe with Jai and Vijay, they're having difficulty understanding because the they were bitten by the serpent of anger. So it sort of is like like an obstruction to understanding good advice. Right? When you're bitten by the serpent of anger, and their souls were not satisfied with hearing the Lord's lovely and illuminating speech, which was like a series of Vedic hymns. So that means that their souls were not satiated with hearing the Lord's lovely and illuminating speech. So they were not purified enough to be able to appreciate what the Lord is saying.
Whereas it just seemed like it would have been because the sages were bitten by the serpent of anger, their souls were not satiated. It seemed like the joints, and even though the sages were bitten by the serpent of anger, it seemed little.
Well, now you can see when you get angry, you don't really hear things correctly. And it's difficult to hear good advice, especially because you're angry. It's very important to control anger. Anger, lust, anger, and greed are the three doors to hell. Lust, anger, and greed.
Part of Maya, Maharaj, like anger is part of Maya, right? Like is Vaikuntha also Maya exists?
Vaikuntha is what?
Does Maya exist in Vaikuntha too? Like this happened at the doors of Vaikuntha.
Well, okay, let's not make so many equations. Anger is destructive, right? There is some examples of bona fide anger. Like if someone insults Guru or insults Krishna, then you just can't stand there and say, "Oh, interesting." No, you have to say, "Look, this is aparad." You don't realize how serious it is, and I'm going to ask you very kindly to refrain from such speech and ask for forgiveness, actually. But if a person cannot control their anger, then they're going to commit a lot of offenses. And because of those offenses, they're going to suffer in life, especially if they are angry and are insulting devotees and Krishna and so forth. So we have to correct people, but Prabhupada always said, correct people with gentle speech, not with harsh words. If you go up to a person, you're a complete nonsense person. All of a sudden, that's like it's an attack to a person. So they can't hear properly after that because their false ego has been hurt by that speech. But if you speak gently and kindly, but speak the truth, then there's much better possibility that someone can understand. So the question is, that's why it's in the Bhagavad Gita that the how to speak properly. Here's my Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it says, Anudvega karam vachyam satyam priya hitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam shaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. This is the austerity of speech. And here it says, in the purport, Prabhupada says, one should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students, but such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students if he will agitate their minds. Very good advice. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussion, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech. So there it is, penance of speech. And it's in the 17th chapter, 15th verse. But the main point is, one should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. So Prabhupada would always say, like, if one of the leaders was, mandated to go and speak to a devotee who was insulting someone else, and he would always say, well, speak gently to him. You just don't go up to a person and say, you're trying to correct, you say, you're a nonsense, blah, 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 and calling him different names and things like that. Then, there's going to be, the person won't be able to understand. Haribol. Okay, so we will. Also, there's another reference here, 6th chapter, 35th verse. That's it. Lord Sri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Oh, why did I 636? 635. Yeah. In purport, it says, the difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment, it is possible to control the obstinate mind. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. So, if we just learn that one thing, vairagya, which means, becoming detached from material things, means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. So, how do you do that? Chant Hare Krishna. Hear lectures given by genuine devotees. give lectures based on the scriptural evidences, and engage in the 9 types of devotional service. And the beginning of that is Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and repeating about the Lord Vishnu. And then you'll be able to Shravanam, remember also, by hearing and repeating. Harivilas. And that's from the 6th chapter, 35th verse. Yes. Any more questions?
Any more questions online?
So Prabhupada says, Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called parisanubhava, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objects. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. It's a fantastic purport. This is 6th chapter, verse 35. Yeah. And it says, the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. So that's what we're doing every day. We're hearing about Krishna. Haribol. So that should settle our mind to being very peaceful, satisfied. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.